Yo, what is up, Canes fans? It is the Beast. Welcome back to the channel, The Beast on. In my comfy again. Love my comfies. I got green, I got red, I got gray. I just wish they would sponsor the channel already. Hey, if you see this face, if you hear this voice, subscribe to the channel, share it, retweet it, like it, share it, do all that stuff. Don't just give me a little heart. Actually share it. Share the video. Tell your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, your uncle, your aunt, cousin, your girlfriend, your wife, your partner, your husband, all that stuff. Just tell everybody about the channel. We appreciate it, and subscribe. I'm going to talk about the Barry Jackson, Al Blades situation as it relates to ethics of journalism. But before we do that, I need you to get on a bandwagon. Yesterday, I started a petition on change.org for the University of Miami to retire the number 26, of course, worn by Sean Taylor. Personally, I don't believe that number should ever be worn again for obvious reasons, but I will put the link to the petition in the description of this video, and it would be really cool if you could go and sign it, and most importantly, share it to all of your Canes friends that you have on your timeline and your Facebook feed and all that stuff. Let's see if we can get this thing kicking and let the powers that be at the U know that no one should ever wear number 26 again. All right, on to this. So if you missed it last night, and if you're watching this video today, it is Wednesday, December 9th. So last night, Tuesday, December 8th, we had a bit of a Twitter situation. Barry Jackson, the Florida Sports Buzz, I think the best sports reporter in town, if you ask me, no offense to anybody else, reported that Al Blades would miss the rest of the regular season with a medical condition. And I apologize for not having the tweets in front of me to go through the exact timeline, but let's just say that was the tweet that came first. He didn't say what the medical condition was. He just simply reported that Al Blades would miss the rest of the regular season with a medical condition. Shortly after that, Al Blades, via his own Twitter, announced that he was missing the rest of the season due to a heart condition. I think it was myocarditis, but I may have gotten that wrong, so don't quote me on that. And then there was a back and forth between Al and Barry about why'd you leak that information, and why would you report that, and that sort of thing. And fans started getting on Barry for reporting the story, and emotions got high. And so there was a lot of tweets back and forth, and I was just sitting in my car while the wife was in Publix, and I decided I needed to weigh in on the situation because journalism ethics is something that's important to me. It's because it's something I've always been into, among other things, but it's what I went to college for. I mean, my degree ended up being only in broadcasting and not broadcast journalism, simply for credits purposes, because Assistant Dean Shapiro, I don't know if he's still there or not, but he screwed me out of some credits. Therefore, at the very end of my college education, I had to switch from broadcast journalism to broadcasting, but I had all the journalism credits. I took all the journalism classes. I spent a summer in Washington, D.C., studying political journalism at American University, and I've always been a student of the act of journalism, even after college and whatnot. And for a time, I worked for CBSSports.com as a journalist covering the Canes, written wise, and studied my AP style book and all this stuff. So, not that this is about me or my credentials, but I grew up learning what was right and what was wrong in the world of journalism. So, as it was explained by Barry, he had the story, a while ago. He went to UM, as he should, with the story to say, hey, I have the story about owl blades. And Barry knew it was a hard issue. Do you have any comment? What would you like me to do? How would you like me to handle this? And that's the right way to do it, is to go, if you have a story about a player that plays for an organization, you always go to that organization first with the story before you report it, to give them a chance to either comment, confirm, deny, or let you know there's some sort of factors involved in the story. That's the right way you do things. So Barry did that. He went to UM, and UM said, listen, Al would like to tweet the story, or like to get the story out himself. We would like if you first, and they said, here's the day and the time that you are allowed to report this story. Days later. And we would like it if you did not include the heart condition as part of the story. Just say it was a medical condition. So Barry, having confirmed this, and the first rule of journalism is to always double source a story independently. So when you get a story, let's say you're told by one source, hey, so-and-so has a broken leg. Well, you can't just go with that story because it's only one source. You have to independently confirm that story with a different second source. So, in other words, if the trainer tells you that the player has a broken leg, you can't go to the assistant trainer to confirm it. I mean, they work in the same room. You have to get it from somebody else involved with the team. If it's the professional ranks, you get it from the trainer, then you go to the player's agent. And if you get double confirmation, independent of each other, of a story, then by journalism ethics, you can go with the story. Of course, you always go back to the organization first and say, hey, I have it double sourced that X player has a broken leg. Can you confirm or deny the story? They will either say, we confirm the story, that's not true, or we have no comment, or they'll say, listen, we'd appreciate it if you gave us 24 hours for this mitigating circumstance, what have you. So getting back to the Al Blade situation with Barry independently confirmed the Al Blade story with more than one source. He went to UM. He said to UM, I have the story about Al Blades. Can you confirm? Can you deny? What can you do? What should we do here? And UM said, listen, Al wants to be the one to drop the story. And you need to wait to a specific date and time in order to reveal the story, in order to report it, and don't include the heart condition part of it. So Barry did what he was told. He waited till a certain day at a certain time, and he reported that Al Blades was going to miss the rest of the regular season, or miss the rest of the season with a medical condition. And then shortly after that, Al released his statement saying it was a heart condition, and then Al was upset that Barry had reported the story. Well, listen, I have all the love in the world for Al Blades Jr., and I saw some idiot making jokes about him last night, which is utterly stupid, and you should go take Twitter time out for a while. But if there was a miscommunication about the fact that Barry was going to report the story at a certain date, a certain time, and Al was pissed off about that, well, that's not a Barry problem. I know emotions are high, and you may think that it is, but that's not a Barry problem. Barry arranged with the school to give them, I believe it was 3 days, to deal with the communication on this. It is then up to the school. It is up to the sports information department or the athletic communications department or whatever we call it these days to talk to Al and say, hey, Barry Jackson has his story. We told him to wait 3 days to report the story at a certain time. So if you want to tell your story, you have to get it out before this day and this time. Now, if they didn't explain it well to him, if the point didn't get across, if signals were crossed, that's not a Barry issue. That's a Al Blades issue. And I know that sounds tough and rough and what have you, but like, welcome. Unfortunately, this comes with the territory of being involved in high-level sports and journalism and all that stuff. I know they're still kids. I get that. And that's why Barry gave the benefit of the doubt of holding the story. Because they're kids. Because it's kids involved. If Barry had the same story about a Heat player, and the Heat tried to say, well, you can't go with this now, blah, 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 but Barry had independently confirmed the story, more likelihood he would have just gone with the story and not waited 3 days because they're professionals. But in this case, Al, not a professional, a college kid, Barry did the right thing and waited for when said, Barry, it is okay for you to go with the story at this day and this time. He did the right thing. It may not seem like the right thing because you see Al being emotional and people being emotional and all this stuff, but by the book of journalism ethics, that is the right thing to do. And then furthermore, I see a lot of people on my timeline saying, hey, why don't you reach out to the player to get his thoughts? And that would have been good 20 years ago or so, but that's not allowed anymore. You're not allowed to, does not let journalists reach out to players. And it's been a while since I've been on the beat, but at one point in time, you weren't even allowed to reach out to players' families without permission from So that's something that Barry could not do. He could not, by rules set forth of Barry being able to be a credentialed member of the media at the University of Miami, he cannot reach out to the player. He can't. That if he is found to have reached out to Al Blades, he loses his credential and cannot cover That's their policy. Now, back in the day, and always, before Randy Shannon took over as coach, the University of Miami's media policies were very professional-like as it relates. They were much like the NFL. Locker rooms were open. You were allowed to talk to players. As they were walking off the practice field or around, you were allowed to go up to them and interview them without really much permission needed. You were allowed to call their parents, their brothers, whoever you wanted to get the story, because the University of Miami has always, since Jimmy took over, always had the policy that these kids, were training them to be men, we're training them to be eventually in the NFL, where there's very few restrictions on media policy other than you can't watch practice. We want our kids to be like that. So media, have at it. If you're at practice and practice was more open and a kid's walking off the field, you could go up to him, start walking next to him and talk to him or call his parents or whatever. That used to be the case. It was very hands-off. It was great to cover the U. Locker rooms were open, and and really what it allowed is journalists to really have a great relationship with the players and their families. And oftentimes, if there was a story that was distressing, you'd be able to go to mom and dad or the player, and they'd be able to have that input of, hey, listen, can you wait on this story? We're like trying to deal with this as a family, and you would oblige. There was that relationship, but that's not there anymore, because the University of Miami under Randy Shannon decided that it's all hands off, that you're not allowed to talk to players, you're not allowed to reach out to players, not allowed to reach out to their parents without permission, and blah, 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 blah. It's become way more rigid. And that's how it is. So Barry had no chance to reach out to Al Blades and say, Al, I have the story about your heart. What do you want to do? Let's work this out together. That's not allowed. So it puts Barry in a tough situation, but by all accounts, he followed the rules that were set forth. He followed the ethics and morals of being a journalist. He gave the extra benefit of the doubt of a day and a time when he could release a story. And unfortunately, whatever happened internally within the University of Miami between the communications department of the athletic department and Al Blades, and signals got crossed, and that's unfortunate, but that's not a Barry problem. And so we need to take a step back and realize that. Barry is a good journalist. He's an ethical journalist. He does things the right way. He's amongst the best I've ever seen. And so he would not do something that is going to completely be either wrong or piss off a kid at the University of Miami. That's just not going to happen. But in this case, he was given permission. Now, I haven't heard from the University of Miami. I haven't seen any tweets from the University of Miami. I don't know what their side of the story is. And maybe it's completely different. And I'll be here tomorrow to break that down. But as far as I know, everything was done the right way from Barry Jackson's standpoint. All right, that'll do it for me this morning. Don't forget, sign the Sean Taylor petition. We want to retire number 26. I will see you when I see you. Go Canes.